Welcome, Synthesizer Sickos. I'm Vulture Culture, and tonight we're going to be checking out all of the presets and multi-presets of the Matrix-12 from 1985. Probably the greatest analog synthesizer of all time. If you're just counting the sheer power in terms of modulation, you have something like 5 or 6 LFOs per voice. It is very much like a Hydra synth, but all analog in a certain kind of way as far as what you can do with it. So I'm going to play as many patches as I can. I'm going to try not to speak as much as I usually do, just because I think that this beast speaks for itself. The last thing I'll say before I play another patch is just that the Bob Moog Foundation is raffling one of these off right now for charity. So you can get a $20,000 synthesizer signed by Tom Oberheim, Marcus Ryle, and Michel Doidic. Hopefully I'm saying that correctly. The designers of the synthesizer, making it the only synth that has all 3 of their signatures, and it was owned by Doug Curtis, which is just incredible. Tickets start at $25. You can get, I think, 5 for $100 or something. With that, let's hear some sounds. It's crazy to me that this thing actually, the way it can sound is so unique compared to every other analog synth I've ever heard. Toto Horns is the one I started with, so let's see if I can remember how to play this one. Is it right? Yeah, so yeah, something like that, right? Piano horn. And now you're hearing the inherently bitimbral nature of this beast, right? So we can basically stacking 2 Oberheim 6-voice expanders on top of each other. Incredible key bed with an insane amount of velocity and aftertouch control. Better than anything I've ever experienced. Can I get a scum cheers in the chat for everybody who makes Wednesday nights here on YouTube, the place to be if you're into synthesizers. This one's called The Wall. listening in stereo because the width is incredible. Unlike something like an OBXA or OB8, you can save the panning per patch, so you can do all sorts of things depending on splits and layers. So if you're not listening in stereo, you're not getting the full experience of the synthesizer. So what we're hearing there, I believe, is 12 voices stacked on top of each other. And that really goes to show, by the time this synthesizer was made, how Doug Curtis, the engineer of Curtis Electromusic chips that were used in basically every synthesizer in the 80s, he had gotten it to the point where these VCOs were so stable that they're almost a little DCO-like, and I think the Oberheim OB8 kind of has that sound a bit, and then the XA a little more wild, and then the X certainly more wild in terms of just a little bit more there. And of course, this this thing sounds lush. There's no denying it, but it can also actually sound surprisingly tight. This is E grand. You can hear this sort of holdover from, hey, the marketing department says we have to be able to do a DX7 sound. I'm trying to kind of pick out the different little subtleties. Like an incredible amount of range in terms of what can be done with the velocity here. I imagine in 85, this must have been just such a touching sound. I know my playing isn't as ideal as it could be, but Johnny Morgan, welcome to the stream. I'm a huge fan of your channel. I really appreciate you being here. Yeah, it is massive. You can see, if any of you guys are familiar with the channel, the CS7EM is giant. It is a huge boat of a synth, but it's paled in size by the Matrix-12. Interestingly, the Matrix-12 is relatively light. It's a pretty lightweight piece of kit compared to something like the JD800 or even the Ensoniq TS10 behind me is much heavier. Yeah, not as heavy as a DSS-1. It's surprisingly light. We haven't even covered the first 10 patches, and yeah, so we've got a lot to dig through tonight. And again, the focus of this stream for me is not going to be going too in depth into how it all works. It's all printed here. I quite like a synth where it has the manual more or less printed onto the synthesizer. But tonight's more about just checking out how it sounds. In the near future, I'm going to be doing streams talking about the sound design and everything with this. And it is a little more complicated than other synthesizers. You've got things like ramp generators and tracking generators and lag and all sorts of stuff. But at the same time, it is laid out very intelligently. So here we're hearing that famous notch filter. way, this is a split. So it's from A minor down, so So you can hear that we both can do these really powerful, bright, borderline distorted bass sounds, you know? And then over here we have this kind of notch thing going on. Notice that more complex modulation going on in there. So this is one of those patches for me where I get a little lost in terms of understanding how using resonance and maybe the phase of the filter. So that's another thing if you're not familiar with the synth, it has 15 filter modes in it as compared to, you know, most analog synthesizers that have one, right? And some of those are like phase plus low pass or stuff like that. Like it's very deep. And to be able to create these vocal tones are just really stellar. And I would just like to reiterate for everybody who's just getting to the stream now, welcome everybody. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't yet, like and subscribe. You know, all of that stuff that us YouTubers have to say to keep our channels from drowning under the algorithm. If you haven't yet, you could get one of these incredible synthesizers valued at $20,000 from the Bob Moog Foundation. They're raffling one off currently. The link is in the description. You can buy a ticket for $25, and that could be the winning ticket. That synthesizer is signed by Tom Oberheim, Michel Doidic, and Marcus Ryle, who now heads up kind of the modern Oberheim as far as he was the designer of the Matrix-12, some of the other vintage products from Oberheim, and then most recently OBX8 he was the lead designer on. So if you love that synth and what he's contributed to the industry, along with things like ADAT, he invented that, which behind MIDI has to be probably the most universally used communication in all of audio. And just an incredible piece of music history in front of me. And you could have it for as little as $25. I think you can get 5 tickets for $100. The raffle ends March 10th. So I wanted to make sure I could get this live stream out so people could hear how it sounds while they still have time to buy a ticket. So if you haven't yet, please do that. Let's see, what else do we have in here? Let's go to 10 now. I absolutely think, hey, Hans Volt, Mighty Pinto, welcome to the stream. To Karmic, I do think a polychained OBX8s would be close to an M12, but I would never, I think an OBX8 is just a great synth on its own. I don't think you really need to make it into an M12. The OBX8 does have a notch filter, a bandpass, and a high pass filter. Basically the SEM version of those filters, but you can't morph between them like you can on an OB6 or a TO5. So that's an interesting thing. G-Storm Electro has a really cool video on how you can morph between filters on the Matrix-12, essentially setting up identical patches, layering them, and then crossfading between the two filters. So like almost identical except for the filter types. And because it's got 12 voices instead of 6 like an OB6, you end up still having the same polyphony as an OB6. So that's a really cool video. It's also like 3 or 4 minutes long, which shows how easy it is to program a synth like this, or how powerful it can be. I will say, to Sari's point, that the Matrix series has a bit of a different sound than the OB series, just kind of inherently. On that. You can hear how the voices are moving around in the stereo spectrum. And up here, we really don't even hear those tines, but down here, yes, Hans Volt has an expander, and essentially the Matrix-12 is just 2 expanders stacked on top of each other. And if you were going to spend money on one of the 2 synths, I would say expander all day long. And you can transfer expander patches into a Matrix-12. I've done it. Come on. Now, one thing that I haven't learned how to do yet on this synthesizer is like modify the patches. So currently we're in multi-mode, which is using, at first you might think it's using 2 patches, right? But the Matrix-12 is truly, what is the phrase? Heterogeneous in how it can be programmed. So this synth, I think any other synth aside from the Oberheim 4 or 8 voice, every voice can be its own sound. And so you can actually set up the Matrix-12 to work like an Oberheim 12 voice synth, which is something crazy. But you can do the same thing on an expander, and you can hear certain patches that are using the multi-timbrality in that sort of D50 JX10 LA synthesis thing where you've got like an attack and then a sustain layer or something like that. It's good for E-piano sounds and stuff. But in general, I don't think you actually need the power of 12 voices as often as people think. And that would be why, again, I'd be very happy with an Oberheim OBX8. Just because you don't really need. I say that, but then this sound. I don't think there's a whole lot of explanation that needs to go on. But anyways, because when I'm in multi-mode, there's many patches potentially being used, I don't think there's a way to control, say, the resonance or the filter cutoff of all of them at once. I think, I could be wrong about that. I have the manual here. It is rather thick, so I will be getting through all of it. But, in the meantime, let's just go with, there are some things, but then again, until Oberheim OBX8 2.0, you couldn't do it on that synth either, so. Just to, we're on patch 16 here. I'm going to go over to single. Single? Wait. How do I get over into the singles now? 17, and then I want to go to single patches. There we go. I need to apply a little bit of pressure. So you can hear I have aftertouch on this one. So let's find a... Okay, this one's called Big Sin 2, right? So if we want to use this one, we can go into the VCF now and control this, and then crank the resonance up. And hear basically the greatest resonance ever. I'm going to crank that to 63. It should be fully self-oscillating at this point, so I'm going to turn the volume down a bit. We'll see if she steps. It's hard to tell because of the kind of FM-y sounding nature of this particular patch, but to my ear, the filter doesn't seem to be stepping terribly. I'm aware of some synths where you really hear the quantization between those parts. Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. So you push the soft button under each multi-patch and then hold them until each is selected. Then you can tweak all parts. So there you go. Hans Volt right there has the answer for how you can tweak all of them. Love that one's called FM Slap. That's really funny to me that that's what they thought. Oh, so here's one called Liquids. Sounds beautiful. So now what we can do is change the mode here through the different modes. So like here's a one pole low pass filter, which you couldn't even do on a SEM, right? A SEM's a two pole. Versus 4, right? The amount that sharply cuts down, or we could put it into like an Oberheim OBX mode with a two pole filter. But then we can go into high pass, all the way into band pass. It's probably how they get some of those really great sounding. We've got notch. Oh yeah, and these are the fun ones, right? So. I think on, and then we can go to 3-pole phaser. So what's interesting about this is it's like a notch filter. But kind of like a high pass filter too. Now we move into some of the more exotic ones. So this is high and low pass filter. I'll turn the resonance down. Notch and low pass. Wow. It just keeps going. Phase and low pass. Echo Craft, how's it going? Yeah, it's just pretty incredible. And then what else do we have? I think that's it. So those are all of our different ones that we have. I just wanted to show real quick a little demonstration of the filter before we just jumped back into playing some patches here. Let's keep going with wood bass. That's the type of sound it is. We have some blank patches built in, I guess, so you can make your own. There we go. Double brass. And just like on OB8, we have page 2 things here. So when we're in multi-mode, or I don't know if I should say it's page 2, but like you have highlighted basically when you're in single mode, but in multi-mode, it does something else. So we can see like detune per patch. So you can, or per voice, so you can detune individual voices. Let me see if I can use words properly. Transpose different voices and pan different voices. So we have different. And what was the trick, my friend Hans? Was it we go and we just patch edit all of them? Can I hold all of them down at once? Looks like I am now. And then if I go to the frequency, I'm not holding them all down clearly. Oh yeah, there. Hell, stickiness. Come on, baby. Give me that last one. Give me the last. Oh, it's fighting me. I might have to get that. Anyways, just kind of fun there. So it's called violin. Keybed's probably the best I've ever felt aquatic, by the way. Hello. As far as the knobs, they're a little clicky. I'll try to see if I can get my mic close enough so you can hear that. So that has a certain kind of feel to it. I guess the buttons feel fine. They feel very buttony when they work. Come on, baby. Oh, there we go. I got it. Just need to exercise it, I guess. Come on, baby. Give it. There we go. Now I'm modulating everything. Might take me a bit. Lava, welcome. Machines 1, how are you doing? Yeah, it's pretty intense, right? What it can do. 22 horn strings. So this one's pretty cool because it's both that Oberheim brass thing and a great strings patch. So definitely going to give you a certain kind of flavor. Maybe a little cheesy. Ultimate synth wave. Interesting, the Polybrute 12's knobs feel plasticky. Knobs on the Summit are nicer. I would love to get a Summit at some point. Yeah, I would not buy this synthesizer for the knobs. They are the only way that Oberheim was able to make a synth this complicated was by reducing the number of knobs, and putting menus into the thing. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't really think it could be better because it all is laid out pretty simply, and you don't have to use the complicated things like FM lag, tracking, the ramp, all 6 LFOs per voice, or maybe it's 5 per voice plus the global vibrato LFO. So essentially the way they did this was they added just 1 extra LFO on top of everything to control vibrato, because of course you use that quite a bit. The levers feel great. I don't know if you can see this. No, it's off camera tonight, but I have the Matrix 6 down here. And I have to say, if we're just talking about like the levers and the key bed, the Matrix 6 is great too. So there's nothing wrong with getting a Matrix 6 and using it as a MIDI controller for an expander, for instance, and you still have 12 voices. They'd be different voices, but that's not an entirely bad thing, because I do think the Matrix 6 might have the better factory patches. I think that the Matrix 12 is, of course, incredible, but I don't think the factory patches even get across the power of this thing. I think they focused on going for a lot of the sounds that they were famous for from synths like the OBX and OBXA, and then some kind of DX7 competition patches, which you got in all of the mid-80s synths. They all had to have an E-piano that sounded like a DX7 and stuff like that. We have a marimba here. Very convincing reggae drum. Very velocity sensitive. And again, because you have all of that control in the modulation matrix, kind of a funky little thing there. Bass horn. Whoa. So there is a raffle going on, $25 to get one of these. And one more thing I want to say about that synthesizer they're raffling off, beyond its heritage of being owned by Doug Curtis, there are a few revisions of Matrix 12s. I'm not exactly sure which revision mine is, but that one is where the individual outs are coming out of that synthesizer. So like an expander where you can have each voice be its own synth. The expander has 6 outputs. The Matrix 12, they're raffling off. It's one of the 12 output versions. Mine is just stereo, which is fine for me because at the end of the day, I'm more likely to use it in a stereo configuration. And control the panning just inside of the synth. You can see here it says, hopefully you can see, mid, left two, right one, right two, right two. So basically each of those voices is at a different place in the stereo spectrum. And that's saved, again, per multi-patch, or there's a global version of that when you're in single mode. But so essentially what you have going is with that one they're raffling off, one of the early ones where it actually has the individual outs. It's pretty incredible. I mean, you could do a whole song sequenced into that, right? This is not the raffle synth. Yes, that's correct. I had to actually sell both kidneys to be able to afford this synthesizer. Incredible how dynamic some of these patches are. We could get really versus yeah. If you've got three, you can probably afford them better than I can. So these choir patches for me are just where it's at in terms of really showing what can be done with a synthesizer like this. It's beyond what I can comprehend in terms of sound design as far as filters go. I'm pretty good if you give me a low pass, even a stray band pass filter comes my way. I'm like, oh, okay, I kind of know what to do. CS70M has those. But when it comes to this, it's just pretty crazy. It's very hard to imagine selling an OB synth, Daniel. I mean, I get it. This is a beautiful sounding synthesizer, but the OB series is also something special. I would love at some point to try to see if I could rent an OBXA from somebody and try to see if I could, how close this can get to that synth, because I think that would be useful to people who watch this channel. The idea of, I think my favorite thing to do is do comparisons, because it's very revealing, and some part of me wonders if the Matrix-12 can do a really great Tom Sawyer Rush type of thing. In fact, we should probably try to do that. But I promised I would play all the multis. The Matrixes really excel at these types of guitar string type sounds too. The Matrix 6 MZ string is one of my favorite patches, and I hope I can actually program it into the Matrix-12, because I will be selling my Matrix 6 at some point. I can't really justify owning both of them. Very similar to that, but not quite all the way there. Oh, it's good. Synthcat, how are you doing? One's called New Age, and it's giving New Age for sure. You can hear it's got a guitar in there. If I play very quietly, it's just guitar. If I play hard, just crazy, isn't it? So maybe I should take it back a little bit. There are some patches in this that are just pretty phenomenal, but at the same time, I do think one thing I want to point out here that I believe I'm hearing, without diving deep into the modulation matrix on this particular one, this is a trick the Matrix 6 can do too, where your velocity is routed to attack. So if I play with some pretty good strike, you'll hear a fast attack. Ba, 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 ba. If I play quietly, you get like a slow attack, right? Which is pretty crazy. Because, I mean, this is something you can't do with a normal analog synthesizer, right? Where you have both a pad and a lead at the same time, so I can play a really nice... betrayed me there. Piano string. And then page 2. Wait, I want to see here. Oh, wait. Didn't mean to do that. Yeah, so if I'm looking at this correctly, if I'm understanding the matrix here, it's using 4 voices at once, and you can kind of hear it. We've got a guitar layer. We have a tine, like a really high-pitched sort of tine layer. A tine thing, and then we have that guitar layer, and then, of course, the string. And the strings seem left and right to me. So if that's the case, we should have only 4 voices of polyphony. So let's see. No, it still seems pretty close there. So yeah, Nurteno, I as well am rocking it. So talk about a patch that's using those multi-mode filters well. It's giving JX10. This one's called Duo Growl, and definitely has a bit of that. No one's won it yet. Who just said that? DJ Emo. No one's won it yet. This is not the exact synth from before. This is just one that's similar. I wanted to do this live stream so people could hear what the synthesizer sounds like before they go ahead and purchase it or purchase a ticket. Nurteno, I do actually want to do a stream or a video comparing the Matrix-12 to the plugin. I'd be very curious because I was quite impressed by Arturia's SQ80, but we'll see. So I'd be curious on this one maybe. Why don't we try editing these patches? So let me think about this for a second. So if I go to patch edit, like that, and then I have to go to page 2 and give me that last one. Come on. There we go. Hopefully that's everything. And then I can go and I'm still holding down 1 and I go back to, no. Huh. If I want to put this thing into, why is my voice sounding distorted? Is my voice sound distorted to you guys too? I don't know, it's sounding very weird to me. Let me just double check these settings real quick. Make sure it just seems like my voice is ripping up, but I don't know what that could be. In here anywhere, is there some issue going on that I'm not aware of? It seems okay. Let me see if I turn that off. Maybe that's, oh, I see what's going on. Let's just bring the, let's threshold up. Bring it to release a little bit. Does that help? I don't fucking know. I don't know what I'm doing. Anyways, hopefully that's fine. We'll address that later. What I was hoping to do is get into this one. So let's go into single mode real quick. I gotta get these buttons worked out a little bit. Okay. And then I think I can go to store clear. Where is clear? Somewhere here there is a button that says clear. I had it in the manual here. Hold store, press the clear button. Located in the modulation source, X select. Okay, is it up here? Ah, there it is. Okay, store clear. This gives us a default patch. Now, I'd be curious to see if I could make this into an unison patch, but for now we probably don't need to worry about it too much. So let's go into VCO 1 first. VCO 2. Let's detune VCO 2. And then go just into the filter over here. And then we want to, it's being modulated by VCA 1 by 63, which is the maximum. So then we just need to go to VCA 1, which is what? Is that on another page here? No. FM lag, LFO. Where are they hiding the VCAs here? Is it under here? You do lose something a bit as you increase the resonance there. Let's look at the envelopes. Oh, I see. It's an envelope 1. Sustain all the way down. Back to the filter, VCA 1. And then I'll just here should be enough, right? So I feel like if this is modulated all the way, and then I go to VCA 1, right? Shouldn't that be... Huh. Okay, I don't want to waste too much time on that. I've already spent a pretty good amount of time just messing around with some of these things. Clearly, there's more that I need to learn about this guy. Snapshot. It's actually not... it's not heavy at all compared to a lot of my other synths that are much smaller. And if we go in here to detune, we can adjust the detune of some of these. Like a really bassy, delicious version of marimba we heard earlier. How's it going, Keith? Talk about these big unison patches. It's called No Angel, really aptly named. Then we have some blank ones. Kind of blank. I think this one's called Triple Cello. Wouldn't say it's... You know, around this time, again, samplers were starting to take over, and... I think the marketing departments of all of these synth companies wanted to make patches that appealed to people who might try to buy something else, maybe. And in my opinion, that was never the move, because what makes a Matrix-12 sound great are these analog synth patches, not necessarily trying to replicate a realistic patch. Having said that, when you're making patches, it can be fun to try your best at, you know, capturing like, okay, what's a violin like or something like that, because then you could come up with something cool, but maybe add a little more detune or something to it to make it bigger. It might not be Portamento, it might be like the ramp generator in there. That low layer in there. Whoop, 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 whoop. What do you guys think so far? Is this synthesizer worth $20,000? Don, the link is in the description. You could also just search Moog Foundation Matrix-12 or something like that. And you go to the website, tickets are $25. One of the tickets bought will be the winning raffle ticket. You can get 5 for $100. That's probably what I'd recommend. Gives you a better shot of getting it. But it could be that someone who buys just a single ticket, $25, gets the $20,000 synthesizer. It's probably hard to justify $20,000 for me to adapt. And yet here I am. Twin Cities, hello. Don't you worry, Noor. I'm not sure if I'm saying your name right, but this synthesizer will be going in to that legendary synthesizer sample pack, which that link is in the description as well. Can I get a scum cheers and some scum obers for everybody here tonight making this stream so awesome? I feel so honored to have one of these, so privileged to have one of these in the studio. Not everybody is so lucky to be able to have a piece of history like this, and I feel just very grateful, and there's no way in the world I would ever be crazy enough to buy one of these if it wasn't for you guys. So I just want to say a huge thank you to everybody out there for coming on this synthesizer journey with me. So cheers to all y'all. Chief Omen. Slammed it down too fast. Rookie mistake. Keepgate. It's a Mezcal Pathfinder and then a Corona NA because I'm hardcore like that. I agree, Anthony. I don't know that it's ever worth spending 20 grand on something because, you know, for instance, right below it, here's a synth that I love, the Korg Poly 6. You can get it probably for like $1,700-1,800. Incredible synthesizer, synth I'm probably never going to sell. Love the sound of it. And this is an incredible synthesizer I'll probably never sell. Love the sound of it. But do you know what I mean? Like per dollar spent for dopamine, 20K is a lot. But completely different math equation, $25 to maybe win. And here's another big thing too. I should have said this earlier in the stream, so sorry. Interesting little one of those voices. Maybe there's a corrupted But I cis-X'd it in. I don't know. But another big thing is just take the the gas out of it, the gear acquisition syndrome, and just that the Bob Moog Foundation, what do they do? Well, of course, it helps support the Moogseum, but the bigger thing is they do all of these basically courses for kids. They're in like second grade, I want to say. So it's like 7, 8 years old, and introduces them to music and music technology. So not just synthesizers, but music in general, to get a new generation of kids interested in the magic of not just synthesizers, making music in general, but certainly nowadays that's going to be synthesizers, So when you're donating to the Moog Foundation, you're not just buying 5 tickets. You're not just gambling to see if you can win a $20,000 synthesizer. You're actually helping out a lot of underprivileged kids, and so I love that, and I love supporting charity that does a lot of good. Plus, I don't know how this works. I believe you can write charities off for like taxes and things like that. So if you can do that, I believe you can. Oh, so this one's really interesting. So we've got this, and then in the middle here, so just right in this little area here, we have just the tine, and then so you can hear a really fast pitch envelope there that's causing that little click at the beginning there. We've already heard that. The width, I mean, that's really what you're getting with the Matrix-12. A lot of these patches really are just taking similar patches and detuning them and then throwing them hard left and right. That way you get this super wide. Then I think a lot of these are kind of blankish. Oh, this one's cool. Yeah, it is sort of like a brass monster, right? And then, of course, analog strings too, right? have that same thing going on where the attack, I believe, is being routed to, or velocity is being routed to attack. Have a pretty fast attack on there if you're not doing if you're slapping the shit out of it. Interesting how it goes into that kind of that FM, what they call an FM. I have to say that tine is very satisfying. I'm not always the biggest fan of those types of sounds. Chris, welcome to the stream. Or you've probably been here for a bit, but I didn't see you. The biggest difference between this and the expander is just 6 extra voices. So that's why you can get an expander for somewhere between $4,000 to $6,000, something like that, which is still a lot of money for a synthesizer, but it is vintage. It is rarer. They are, and it is unique. You know, the 15 filter modes, there's really not any synthesizer, including even the modern Oberheim stuff, that's quite as in-depth as the expander in Matrix-12. And most of the patches we're hearing right now, I'd be happy to hear with 6 less voices. It's got the character. You don't really need all of that extra. In this case, it's largely doing the role of a chorus pedal in the sense of just making it bigger, more stereo, more detuned, more cinematic, right? So I actually think the expander is a synth worth buying, even if you can stretch to the already really expensive price of $4,000 to $6,000. It's in that weird range of vintage synthesizers that are very expensive, but they are also rare enough and powerful enough that they almost sort of justify their price. And the difference I always say with a vintage synthesizer, doing the comparison with, say, cars. When you buy a brand new car off the lot, it's going to devalue quite a bit. And if I remember the math right, it was something like the Oberheim OBX8 devalued in the used market by about 30%. Something like that, 30, maybe even a little bit more. I did a video back then, about a year after Oberheim OBX8 came out, looking at the devaluation. And 30% is a lot of money to lose on reselling a synth. So say you had bought an Oberheim OBX8 day one, and then a year later, you're like, it's great, but I want to move on to something else and, sell it so I can buy that. Well, you're taking a pretty big cut there. Whereas if you buy a vintage instrument, in theory anyways, the value will at least hold. Right now is a good time to buy synths. It's probably not going to be that way for long, but the uncertainty of everything that's going on economically right now is also driving a lot of people to sell synthesizers at lower prices. So if you were thinking of buying, I doubt anybody in this live stream is thinking of buying a Matrix-12, but they'd rather just win it in the raffle, right? But let's say you wanted to buy a more reasonably priced synthesizer, vintage or modern or classic in the middle there. Now's not a bad time, because I think there are going to be people who are like, hey, I just want to get this synth sold before anything else happens, before, maybe the market does better, maybe it does worse. The point is there's uncertainty at the current moment. And I'm not trying to say be opportunistic, but what I'm trying to say is be smart and be aware that there's going to be times in the market where it's better to be buying synths, and there's times where it's better to be selling synths. A couple, 2-3 years ago, it's a great time to be selling synths. Now, if you have a big bad synthesizer like this, I'm going to have to hold on to this synth for a while to be able to really sell it for what I paid, most likely, because it's just the case that, right now, a lot of people are like, I don't have the extra money to be able to spend on a synthesizer that expensive, which is a perfectly fair thing. So yeah, just wanted to throw that in there. Okay, we've heard that one before. There are a bunch of, Mark, welcome to the stream, by the way. There are a bunch of like brassy patches, or at least one I can think of in the JD800, that do kind of sound like this. It would be fun to try to see what it's like. And that does have a multi-mode filter. Of course, it's all digital, but still would be fun. We've got a patch called Soundtrack. This would have come out the same year as the JX8P, so I don't think it's necessarily a clone of that patch, but it is very similar. And it is very beautiful. Hans, if you're still here, can you tell me if this patch exists in the expander? Taryn says he's always regretted skimping on less voices. Could you give me an example of that? Taryn's had his hands on some pretty awesome synthesizers. Wow, the power of that is just great. Sebastian says, I use the Arturia one frequently. In fact, I have it open in Cubase right now. The Arturia stuff sounds killer until one can drop that kind of cash on the hardware, that is. Yeah. I mean, it's a beautiful thing that we live in a world of clones and software. I'm more of a fan of software than I am the clones a lot of the times. And, interrogating myself about that in the present moment live on the internet, my thoughts probably come down to that when you download a plugin emulation of something like an analog synthesizer that costs $20,000, I think your expectations are appropriately adjusted to it. If it sounds pretty damn close, we're all happy. It's like, it's a fucking, I think it's a $200 plugin. So that's what, 100 times less, So with that in mind, for me, something like a plugin feels like, okay, if it can get close, that's a fucking victory, and they should be commended for that. I think sometimes when companies do clones of classic vintage synthesizers, and I'm not just talking about the one everybody's thinking right now, it's just any of them. The problem is, for me, I'm a bit of a stickler for detail. And I think that's why one gets into vintage synths in particular, but hardware in general. It's because there are little details that matter to musicians. They probably don't matter to the layperson out there who's just listening to your song on Spotify with MP3 compression and everything. But those little details, those little bits of beauty that you get from, it could be a plugin, but a lot of times hardware, these little things that you can pick up, they can be like hypnotic, and they're just so inspiring, and it makes you want to like really display the sound front and center on a song. That's what we're really going for as musicians, is something that grabs us emotionally that way. And so when a company comes along and they say, hey, we're putting out, let's say a certain company came along and put out a Matrix-24 or Matrix-18, right? And they said, yeah. And, you turn it on and the patches, wow, they have the same patch. It's got the same name and it's got the same layout. And wow, it's kind of, yeah, it does sound like it. But then when you put them next to each other and you start to notice, oh, the envelopes are linear. They're not logarithmic. So what that means for anybody who's not like a synth sicko like myself and a lot of the chat here is instead of the envelopes having a more analog shape, which means like not perfectly straight, like myself, not perfectly straight. So a swoop up and down has a more natural sound to it, to our ears, than a perfect straight line. Now, if companies sort of cutting corners, right, they might have linear envelopes because it's just easier, right? It's just like if you program something digitally, like, hey, go from this point to this point in 2.5 seconds, it's just going to do it in a straight line. It takes a few more steps to get a more natural and more interpolation along the way there. So my point here, without going way off on the tangent, I've probably already gone on too long, is when a company does a clone, they had better get it damn right, because those differences do matter to us musicians. They might not matter to the people who make the synths because they just want to, unfortunately, sell something and cash in on its vintage recognizability. Because, let's be honest here, if and in this case, I'm just going to pick on Behringer. I'm not picking on Behringer in general, but just for this one example, let's say Behringer put out a 4 VCO paraphonic synthesizer and they just called it something, but it's not a clone of the monopoly. It's just a whatever synth, right? What do you think the sales would be compared to Behringer monopoly and all the hype around people being like, hey, they cloned the monopoly? Now, in that particular case, and the reason I picked it, I think that's their best clone. I think it sounds really close to the monopoly. Kibu did a great video on that. And that's really cool. I'm happy that exists, but there's a lot of clones that aren't that great. I think I should probably stop talking now and play some more music, but I just wanted to sort of, bring up a little adjacent point there. I don't know. What do you guys think? I'm not trying to say, it's all the way there. I think Softtube, Snapshot Music makes really great ones. Taryn says, I've gone for 8 voices instead of 16. There's definitely been moments in recording where you reach for one more key and lose one of your others. For me, and I'm probably not as good of a keyboard player as you, as I demonstrate every week here on this channel, here's what I'll say. I think 5 voices is a good number for recording. I notice it a little when I'm playing. And a big part of what I love about synths, like this one, is just being able to mess around and play, whatever you want. And have we reached the end here? Oh, we've reached some of these weird ones. Kind of sound effecty stuff. All of a sudden, I feel like I'm in an Ice Planet 9000 song. Here's another weird one. Very Blade Runner. Yeah, it's just kind of a fun little... And I think the rest of these are all blank. Yeah, okay, so now we can go into the single ones. Let's try and see if we could go in and modify this to get a little Tom Sawyer-y thing going here. is interesting because as I adjust the resonance, I'm not really hearing anything. Huh, that's very weird. Wonder what that is. Now when I hear it, let's go back. Something must be going on. Here would be my guess. There's something in the modulation matrix bringing the resonance down. I just don't know what that would be. Okay, so let's go into VCO 1 and bring the frequency down. VCO 2. And we can detune VCO 1 more. Oh, steam pike. Yeah, I would love to check that one out as well. Erica Synth, if you're watching, please send me a steam pipe. And then we can go into the filter here and see if we can increase the resonance further. Envelope 2, that's what it is. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for envelope 2. Right? Am I wrong here? Envelope 2. And then back to the filter. Oh, you can enter values here. Pitch. There we go. Envelope 4 was the one that did the trick. Interesting. Let's modulate that by envelope X and then envelope 4 again and just see if we can increase that. So that's sending it to VCA 1 and then it's modulated by some other stuff. It's kind of crazy what can be done with this synth. I mean, I apologize for not being more well versed on it. I just got this back and thought I got to do a stream as soon as possible, especially after the Moog Foundation put out this beautiful tribute to the Matrix-12 and sort of the story of Marcus Ryle and how him and Michel Doidic made this synthesizer. patches to me almost sound better than the multis, right? It sort of sounds like pulse width, but going back over here, yeah, it's a low pass. Let's change that. Let's make it a... Oh. God, that's gorgeous. It's funny, Sebastian, that you say the MS-20 and the Matrix-12 because they're both very deep. And since you're a sound designer, I understand why you would be so into them because A, the sound is crazy awesome, and B, the modulation is crazy awesome. This is, I think, I mean, I don't know if you can determine, you know, like what's the most modulatable synth. It might be the Moog one. I don't know how many LFOs you have per voice. I believe we have 6 here. So like how many LFOs per voice? Does that determine it? Just the sound of that on the release is just crazy. Don't have, can you import your own noise sample? Definitely, I don't think I have any sort of input. I've got trigger in, pedal inputs, advanced chain, whatever that is, cassette inputs, that type of thing. But I don't think I have anything else that I can get to necessarily. All right, let's try the notch and low. Notch and low pass is kind of cool because it's like a notch, but you don't lose all the low end, so it gets even more crazy. Or if you still want that beef, you know, that low beef on a track. Just gorgeous. Without a doubt, the Rev 2 16 voice, you know, having a full, and the way that you can do stereo stuff with that, I mean, that's a synth that could probably compete with this. And I said it earlier, by the time we reached like 85, we've left the world of SSM chips that were like 10% yield, meaning like 90% of the chips you had to throw out, that were way going out of tune. Prophet 5's just doing crazy shit live on stage in 79. By the time you get to 86, Doug Curtis had pretty much figured out the science of these and got them really, really incredibly in tune. And for better or worse, I mean, it almost makes this VCO synth a DCO synth. And I'm very curious to do some comparisons with the Matrix 6 in the future, to actually just see, okay, so where's the line on that? Like, when does a VCO become so tight that, you know, maybe you want it to be a little bit less tight? I usually, you know, I don't know, insert the sex joke there. I honestly think some of these single patches. Oh, yeah, here we go. So this is using FM, and whenever I hear an FM patch like this, to me, it's like so dystopian. worth buying this just for this one patch. It's interesting that the 3-pole doesn't go fully self-oscillating. If I go 4-pole, we can go full 2-pole, fully self-oscillating. 1-pole, but not the 3-pole. I do agree, Keith, that the multi-poly is probably the best VA synth ever, just because of that voice card technology emulating what you get with a real analog synth. I feel like it's probably more random in some of its tuning than the Matrix-12 is, because this thing just feels so rock solid. On Carl's point about the Moog 1 not being able to modulate any of the effects, that's so shocking to me. When you're comparing it to a synth like this, that, I mean, synth doesn't really need effects. It's that powerful with the 12 voices. But, you know, the CS70M does have effects. There's other synths with effects. And, you know, nowadays we've come to expect, like, hey, I want to be able to put a fucking upsaw LFO on the reverb, right? That's cool as shit, you know, and it is. But considering something like this back then, this is kind of a different sort of area, you know. I actually really like the 3-pole. Ooh, one's like distorted though. Probably really great for creating anything that's industrial, is that dirtier sound. And then you have the 2-pole, which is going to get you more into that SEM territory. So yeah, I mean, we've really barely scratched the surface on this. You've seen me struggle with it a bit. I do have the whole manual. I need to read it. I will still be doing a tutorial series on the Matrix 6, which I think considering, let's say this goes for 15 grand. They valued the one signed by Tom Oberheim, Marcus Ryle, and Michel Doidic at 20 grand. So let's say it goes for 15. I don't know what they really go for, because when it comes to really expensive vintage synths, there's a bit of, I don't think they sell at the prices they're listed for as often as people think. I think people come off of those prices a bit to sell them. Let's say it costs 15 grand. The Matrix 6 costs about $1,500. So 1/10 the price, and the Matrix 6 is easily worth much more than 1/10 the price of this synth. Very kind of similar sound, really. And you've got two voices. You don't get all the crazy filters. That's the big thing. And they are DCOs, not VCOs. But I'm very suspicious that a synth this powerfully constructed, I wonder if it's really going to be that big of a comparison when it comes to DCO versus VCO, because the tuning is so tight on this. Even the OB8, I was listening on Marcus Ryle's comparison between the OBX8 and the OB8. And he was talking about how they upgraded the DACs inside of there to 14-bit, so they could get 128th a semitone resolution on the tuning per key, as opposed to the way it worked on the OBX and the OBXA was they tune the high C and then everything kind of falls off of that. Whereas on that synth, like every note is tuned very well. And with that in mind, it to me makes me think that, obviously that technology was inherited by the Matrix series, that these things are probably pretty in tune for VCO synths. I'm very curious to see if there's any there for the VCO versus DCO thing, at least as far as Matrix synthesizers are concerned. It's, yeah. Keith, I have read different things. Someone smarter than me can answer this, but I have read that the 303 filter slope being 18 decibels is a myth, it's still a 24 decibel per octave, but I could be wrong about that. Renee Ceballos, sorry, I'm saying your name wrong, got both the Moog 1 and the M12. Funky fact, paid more for the M12. The 1 is my best synth ever. The 12 was king 40 years ago. So, a fan of the Moog 1. What do you think about the Moog Muse? I'd be curious to know about that. And Polybrute 12 certainly seems like it might be the king going forward from 2025. But it's always interesting to... I can't wait till, I think next year, I'll be able to do looking back on my takes from 5 years ago when I started doing synthesizer reviews, hardware synth reviews. Seeing what I've evolved on would be interesting, because when OBX8 came out, I thought to myself, that's it. That's the greatest synthesizer of all time. Now it kind of feels like it needs poly aftertouch, right? To be able to really command that price. K3 and a Matrix 6 would be awesome layered together, Todd, for sure. An M6 for $600, that is amazing. And sometimes you can get really good deals on Japanese synths. I've done a video covering my 5 tips before you buy a synthesizer from Japan. I buy a lot of synths from Japan, and it's been really great as far as helping me buy vintage synthesizers a lot cheaper than you often pay over here. Yeah, they really do. Yes, the VFTs are the vacuum fluorescent displays. These are the thing that's terrifying, because I believe if they go, you're kind of fucked. So it's a little bit nerve-wracking. There's not many but VFDs are not a great design choice. And with certain synthesizers, SQ80, for instance, is relatively cheap synth. If you had to, you can fucking figure it out. But and I did have a VFD go on my TS10. It got busted in shipping, and my tech was able to find it, and Reverb covered the cost of it. It was I think with labor, $400 or so. So that's the part plus the labor, and they covered all of it. So, but if this just died on me one day, it would be pretty terrifying. Jason L points out that there's a lot of Moog Muses on sale on Reverb. It's an interesting thing. I do remember that for a while, about a year, no one was even selling their X8s, or at least that's how I remember it. I could be remembering it wrong. I think this is a good place to call it for tonight because there's obviously years worth of growth and diving into this synth that I'm going to be doing on this channel. If you've made it this far, do me a favor and just, I don't know, what's a good way that we could indicate to people that they've made it this far in the stream? I think you should go ahead, drop a whale emoji in the comments below. That's the secret, right? Can I get some scum obers and some whales in the chat? And let's do one more cheers. Carl's got that sherry. I just want to say cheers to everybody who's been here tonight. What an honor. And please, please, please buy a raffle ticket. Even if you don't want the synth, just to help support the charity. Good thing. Obviously, everybody here wants the synth. Cheers. Thank you guys so very much for making this stream what it is. I hope at this point, everybody who's watching, all 75 of you watching right now, have subscribed to this channel. If not, please do. I really need it, actually. It's surprising how hard it can be to push a video out through the algorithm. So if you enjoyed it, please support. It's free, and it helps me out a lot. Thank you guys so much. Continue to be excellent, and I will see you next week.